got off briefly. There it is.
There we go.
Okay. Corinthia, Libby. I don't know why I keep wanting to combine their names.
Just want
Oh my
to spend some. You just
God.
want to spend some time in the Middle East.
Oh man. Yeah.
So I'm Omi and my husband is Pop Pop, yes, grandparents, and our grandkids think of us as one entity, Omi and Pop Pop.
Oh.
They never say them separately.
That's sweet.
Corinthia, do we have an agenda for this meeting? I don't. I
We
saw
did
your
not.
call for items, but I didn't see it.
No, we did not specifically have any agenda items that we wanted to talk to. I think Libby may have had one. So when she joins, we can talk about that one. But Lisa, do you have anything that we should probably be trying to address or tackle? I believe someone sent out an email about us expressing an opinion. Here's Libby.
Yeah, on the demographic question.
It was one before that, but yeah, we could
Oh.
talk about the demographic one too.
Okay.
I think Lisa's just asking if you had any other agenda items besides that.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, not that I could think of right off the top of my head.
I'd like to hear about any feedback from our joint event on the 7th of June.
Hi, Carl. I attended that and now it's not as fresh in my mind, but I think I gave feedback last time. Let's see. Is it, I mean, it.
Libby, you're breaking up again, Libby. Breaking up.
Breaking out.
Event, or was it the second?
Breaking up, Libby. Sorry.
Breaking up is hard to do.
Apparently, it's pretty easy for Libby.
Certainly hard for us to do.
I was gonna say it's easy for Libby.
Actually, Carl, I'd turn the tables a little bit. Just anecdotally, I don't know if you've really looked at it, but you probably have a list of who attends. And I'd be sort of interested to see to what extent, our friends and neighbors at Chevy Chase Voice and on the listserv and people who are causing a lot of ruckus about affordable housing are attend the various events that deal with some of those issues head on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had 120 people actually there, and those that came at the beginning were there at the end. I mean, that was amazing to those of us in HCCDC that have been running these things for a few years now, because usually there's a drop off, right? People for whatever reason tune in for a while, but in this particular case, we had 120 at the beginning and very close to that at the end, with about 160 or so registrations. So a pretty high turnout rate anyway. And a lot of the people that registered but did not show up on the night were people that I know would look at the event later in the recorded version. Because there are people that are interested in asking me about it and so forth. So the number that we got, 120, was actually low, and more people. Of those 120, I only scanned very briefly the attendance list, and so I can't really answer your question. But my impression is that there were very few civic core affordable housing skeptics on it.
Okay.
Hmm. Not a surprise.
Yeah, unfortunate, because the idea of this was to try to transcend whatever polarities we're experiencing in the neighborhood at the moment over this particular issue. It should be transcended, but I'll take a closer look, and with that in mind. But I don't know everybody on the list either, right?
Sure.
I haven't seen I don't know if you have, but I haven't. There are apparently 650 people on the that have signed Robert Gordon's petition, and I've never seen that list, so I don't know who they are.
I think one of the other issues, I had raised an issue in an email because there was a lot of back and forth with all the press that happened last week. There was a lot of back and forth with people who were opposed to the development of the Civic Core, prefacing their remarks by saying, I'm not opposed to affordable housing, but I want it somewhere else, or I want less of it, or whatever. And a lot of those people were then getting responses from others saying, "Atta boy, we know in your heart you're not a racist, or you're a good liberal, and all that." And I think that those of us on this Zoom and in this world understand that when outcomes of policies that are disproportionately affect people of color, you have to at least slow your roll a little bit and think about your positions and the effect they have on other people. It's not so simple as to just say,
Me, right.
yeah, I'm not a racist, but. And I have no idea if there's something this committee can say or weigh in, or something to sort of bring that to people's attention. I don't know. I mean, there's our neighbors, and they're sincere. They're not thinking that they're harming anybody,
Well,
but
one of the things we can do is probably send Kallenberg's book to all those people. I mean, the two very poignant points that he made, and Ron, I think you were there, right, for the Kallenberg?
No, I wasn't. I'm out of town.
Oh, okay. So, but a couple of us were. Libby, I know, was there, and Maurice was there. Maurice and I stared at each other. I was trying to figure out who that was, because I could only recognize him online, right?
You need the Zoom.
Yeah, he's right.
Maurice and I kept making eye contact at strategic moments when they were talking about things that were very pertinent.
Well, one of the central findings of Kallenberg in this study was that it's liberals more than other people of other persuasions that are the most problematic when it comes to NIMBYism, right? It's not. I don't know why that's the case, but he was adamant about that particular point. So
He said, Carl, sorry, I just want to point out, he said that they were elitist. The Democrats, liberals, educated folks like this in, for example, Chevy Chase, are elitist, whereas Republicans are, conservative, and I can't remember the word he used, but there were two words that he used to kind of summarize the tendencies.
Yeah, basically it was the thought of it's more about economic and social barriers that elitists are creating rather than racial ones.
Yeah.
And that the opposition comes from not wanting people who are of a different stature and class, regardless of race, even though they're not overwhelmingly, but they tend to be minorities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's the second
people
point,
too,
right?
of-
Is
of-
the liberal
ahead.
point is one point, and the second and really important point that he made is just what Maurice just said. That we have to, I mean, our committee is called Racial and Social Equity. And the point that Kallenberg was making is that you get to racial equity by focusing on social equity, if I understood him correctly. In other words, we'd probably be doing ourselves a favor if we focused on the class issue, rather than, but in addition to the obvious racial issue as well, because by doing that, there's a certain sense in which you tackle the question head on, and there's a certain sense in which people's sensitivities, people's hackles are raised because you call them racist, right? But if you're not calling them racist, but the effect is racism, another word for what we've been calling structural racism, probably, right? Is that what Kennedy calls a race class, right? So there, if you attack class inequity, you automatically attack some of the racial inequity as well, because of the built-in stratification that comes from a history of not allowing people to get generational wealth and so forth and so on, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's an issue that maybe we want to talk about at some point. And if that's true, what does it mean for the work that we do?
He put a lot of emphasis from the very beginning on economics. He talked more about economics than he did race and racial problems. And he said that is much as maybe racism used to be a factor in determining where people live. He said that now it has a lot to do with class. And he gave examples of, for example, Scarsdale, New York, for example, as an example of an enclave of liberal, educated people who consider themselves perhaps progressive, and they had an opportunity for housing development, affordable housing that would have helped a lot of people who are primarily, I think he referred to Hispanic population that could have really benefited from having an opportunity to live in the community. So many of them work there, right, as domestic helping out and yard landscapers, and they had a very straightforward opportunity to work together and make that happen, and they fought it the whole way.
Yeah, that he talked about was Portchester, which is where the Hispanics that he was talking about live. And we're in the middle of the summer, right? We need to relax a little bit. So if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little anecdote about Portchester. Meryl Lee will know about Portchester because she's not as old as I am. But for those of us who lived in Connecticut on the shore, right? I lived in Milford. That's where we would go to drink when we were teenagers, because the drinking age in New York, and Portchester's the border town in New York to Connecticut. We drive to Portchester, find a bar, drink, and get in our car and drive back. It's amazing that any of us are still alive, but in any event, it was Portchester that was the counterpart to Scarsdale, and these two towns, these two jurisdictions, are side by side.
And it would have been a great opportunity, but he also gave the example of how just as white people more affluent will fight to keep. He said that there have been studies and research shown that more affluent white communities will keep socioeconomically different white groups out as well. And he said that Black affluent groups will do the same thing to keep low economic Blacks out as well. So that was I don't know, he didn't cite the study, but he seemed
Yeah.
pretty well versed in that.
You know, in listening to him, I couldn't help but think of W.B. Du Bois, opus magnus, 1935, Black Reconstruction in America. Because that's the fundamental point he was making is exactly that. Where people should have been allied on class lines, they weren't. So poor whites were hived off by race-inspired blandishments by the planter class, essentially, and the northern industrialists that were investing after the Civil War didn't care anymore, and that was the fundamental issue, the fundamental problem. Why in 1903 he coined the fateful line about the color line being the defining feature of our politics going forward, and was right.
So I wasn't at the talk. I saw the little clip that Maurice you posted, but I only heard a woman speaking. I didn't hear the author speak in that clip.
It's terrific.
But I wanted to, I'm curious, everybody who's spoken so far in this conversation, I think has been white. I just want to hear if any of our Black members have anything to say or add to this.
Hi, this is Corinthia. I don't know if it matters who speaks then or whatnot, but I just wanted to go. Are we still on this topic? Because I just saw I read the email that Lisa sent out, and I want to know what happened at the survey meeting, and I guess the lady Googled me or what, but I don't know. Can we circle to that? And thank you guys for your comments on that event. I'm sorry I missed it, but I didn't get a babysitter.
Can I just say one thing before we wrap that up? I apologize.
No problem.
I bought the book. I'm reading the book. I think it's going to have a lot of relevance to us. So maybe I can pass it around to somebody else after I'm done doing it, because I think it's got a lot of insights into how we approach the opposition issue to the Chevy Chase Corps.
Mhm.
Can you give elaborate on that just a little bit? Yeah.
I mean, basically, he there's a chapter in there which is later on where he devotes to those types of arguments that we're seeing on the Chevy Chase listserv, and how it's a vocal minority, and that the core issue is the fact that it's the single family home exclusionary zoning, where you can only have a single family home structure built on there, and that is what is erecting these invisible walls. It's a little different in the Chevy Chase Corps, because you're talking about land that is owned by the city, and so therefore the city has more power over what to do with it than, say, the Wells Fargo or the Safeway lot. And so for people to say, well, people are going to throw all these different types of objections, and he has responses to all those different objections of like, well, why can't they, there's unused office space downtown, why can't they build it there? Or, what about closer to the metro? Why can't they build it there? Like, why should our nice space taken around? And he was sort of like, just because people live there now doesn't mean that they get to decide what happens to, build up the city, because they weren't around when everything was decided to build what's there now. And so it basically is saying that just because people live close there doesn't mean that their voices should be given more weight. It's really about thinking about the larger community and what's best for the larger community, and making decisions that take all of that into effect. That's like a summary of it. But again, I've only read the introduction so far.
There's actually a
point that you hear on the listserv.
there's a major city in Australia, I think it's Perth, where the people who live closest to an area that's being replanned are actually not allowed to vote on it because they're too close to it. So if the effort is for the good of the city, they do like a jury selection thing, people randomly selected from around the city to opine on plans that have a big impact, and the people most close to it aren't necessarily polled. And I know we have to get to the Corinthia story in a minute, but I wanted to add just one thing, and that is, even if you don't make a judgment about whether people are trying to keep other people out of the neighborhood or not, the fact that deciding that it is more important that you have a 5-story building or a 4-story building than a 6 or 7-story building next to you, that is more important than housing the 20, 40, or 60 families that might be housed there. That's people seem to not recognize that they're then if they make policy decisions, they have an impact on real people that they claim to care about. And if there's a way of pointing that out to people, I don't know, nothing, I'm very pessimistic about whether anything's going to have an impact on anybody at this point, but they're not thinking about it. But I think we need to hand this over to Lisa to tell the story of the last meeting.
Thanks, Ron. So I'm so disgusted. Thank you guys for meeting. I am not listening to anything you're saying right now because I am so
Upset.
thoroughly, upset and disgusted. So at the survey committee meeting, and that tape, I'm gonna get it posted very soon. We were having a discussion about who the survey team wanted to interview in terms of influencers, stakeholder organizations. And Commissioner Gosselin brought up that he felt that we should include community members that were seen as influential in this debate. He mentioned Mary Rouse, Andrea Rosen, and maybe a few other people. I can't remember. Now I can't even remember the conversation in terms of who he specifically mentioned. I disagreed with that, and I gave my various reasons for disagreeing. And then one of the things that I said, well, if we're going to interview people, we need to balance it out. And I said, for one person I would like to have on the record or speaking about this is Corinthia Simmons. Yeah. And oh my God, in the chat, somebody put, and I have to apologize to Corinthia for even talking about this subject, with that she's a focal point. This person made her the focal point without, talking to her first and making sure she's comfortable with this. But the person put in the chat something to the effect that Corinthia, and they spelled her name wrong, and Libby corrected them on the spelling of her name, that she was a GS-14 employee that works for the government. And why give her what special, access or, what basically makes her special. And when I saw that, it took everything in me to not, on a recorded video of an ANC meeting, to lay this person out the way I really wanted to, because it was such a racist, classist statement that, I don't know about you guys, but somebody that's Black always hears these stereotypes of the stereotypical Black government worker. It was just so off-putting. And I made a statement to them in the meeting that this is why, that comment in the chat Is exactly why I didn't want to basically have this polarization with people that are deemed influential, versus other people. It's just not a good scenario. So I kind of calmed down from that. I
You
called
handled it very
Commissioner.
well, Lisa.
Well, let me finish. I called Commissioner Gosselin because I was very upset, and we spoke, and he gave me his view, which was very, right in line with what I thought, and we dropped it, right? So then I sent you guys an email because I do want you guys to see this. I get an email from the lady, Cheryl Barnes, where she says, and I won't read it out on here, but she basically says, we, and she's talking about her and her husband, think it's disingenuous at best and race baiting at worst to trot out the person in question, a whining voice or winging voice at every meeting she attends as a poster girl for poor Black struggling mom. I'm disgusted with this person. And she copies Commissioner Sherman and Council Member Louis George. So I replied to her, and you can see what my reply is, and copied the rest of the ANC and the reason why I copied you all is this is why we're here to deal with issues like this. And there is no way that we should allow someone in the community, and Corinthia has to basically tell us where to go. No way we should allow someone in this community to get away with that BS. No way. And so my whole time I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond as the chair of this commission. That's Cairo. How I'm going to respond as chair, how the commission should respond, how you all as a committee should respond. But this is disgusting behavior. Now, we've listened to everybody that had an opinion on this damn civic core. White, Black, indifferent. Majority white, for sure. And no one brought up their whining at every voice as a, disenfranchised white member of this community. But yet, every time I'm always attacked on these freaking listservs, now they're attacking Corinthia, or she wants to attack Corinthia and then cast her in that light. I'm beyond, I can't even say what I want to say. This is disgusting. And this is why the community is viewed this way. And she said the quiet part out loud.
Lisa,
She said the quiet part out loud.
I want to add a little
Oh.
bit more of what she wrote, because it says, you did it again tonight at the survey meeting. And then she goes on to say that you should be aware that many of your Black, she said, those residents do have a special standing, the ones at McKinley and Northampton. But you should also be aware that many of your Black constituents in Chevy Chase, Barnaby Woods, and Hawthorne have signed the Chevy Chase voice petition against surplus, monster upzoning, and housing on the common site. Do their voices matter as much to you as hers? And so they're using this to bolster their platform.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just wanted to add for everybody. So Bruce Sherman, I used to live in his ANC. He had a meeting and I went to his meeting and I made a comment. So I don't know if this goes back to the Washington Post. Like, I do pay 40% of my salary on rent. So I've never said that I was poor, but I have said that I have grew up in public housing and I have had a struggling start. And when I talked to Bruce Sherman, he told me he wanted to know more. When I attended his meeting, I shared my thoughts, and someone had told me that the affordable housing that they're going to build isn't going to benefit me anyway. And I said, that doesn't matter, that I'm not doing this for it to benefit me. I'm doing this for people who don't have a voice, or who it's just, I'm a public service worker. And so we need affordable housing the city has an opportunity, why not support that? And so I had a one-off talk with Bruce Sherman, and he was asking me just a lot of questions, just like, well, what's your plan? Do you intend to stay here? Are you just trying to just see if I'm going to be in the neighborhood for, I don't know what his reasoning was, but I told him as well that this isn't something that's going to benefit me. And I'm not only supporting this for this to benefit me, I'm supporting this to benefit others that need it. So I've never been in support of this because, oh, I'm low income and I want to live in low income housing. I just know how it feels to be housing insecure. And I don't think nothing, I don't know why it's always about poor people and affordable housing. You shouldn't have to spend all your money on housing. So that's all I have to ask that. I wasn't at that. So
Yeah, they want to
Well-
take your citizenship away. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? I mean, they don't recognize you as a citizen, they recognize you as something else.
yes, and that's why I think when we do all of these surveys, I've participated in the previous surveys when I lived over in Bruce Sherman. I did it when John Higgins was our council, our ANC rep. And I think one thing that frustrates me is always pointing out the people who are owners and not owners as though our opinions don't matter because we pay rent. I still pay income taxes here. At one point in time, I did pay property taxes to the city, but I'm still just as much of a Chevy Chase resident as anyone else. And I just really hate the, I just don't like the differentiation between people. To want nobody ask anybody else, here or Mary or any other people that are vocal against it, like, are they for it because they're quote unquote poor, or are they against it because they're not poor? So I guess that goes back to what Maurice was talking about, and you guys who went to the event about the classes. I don't know.
It's classes. This statement was classes and races, both. They're classes and races. And in this meeting, we had a commissioner who also happens to be white, mention white members of the community that are way more opinionated in public than you ever been.
Exactly.
And not one word was said about those members. But the first time the Black commissioner mentions the Black person, and I didn't mention you, Corinthia, because you were Black. I mentioned you because of your position on affordable housing. And I know that you have been on the listserv trying to be equally as vocal as the opponents. That's why I mentioned you, not because of your race, but because of your intelligence on this matter and your arguments for affordable housing. And then for someone in this community to turn that around and call you basically what she called you, and to articulate that I mentioned you as race baiting for the poor Black moms, are you kidding me?
Well, I think, that's what we ought to advertise. That's what we ought to say, look, this is what was said. Take a look at it.
Oh, I am going to put it out there. I'm definitely going to put it out there. Because this is what we have been saying. And this is what I've been seeing. These are the undertones that have been running, and everybody gets so offended. I get it. Nobody wants to be called racist. But then you do something like you do this and you say this in a public forum and then copy my council member on it too. Like, what is Janice Lewis George supposed to say? She better say something.
I think
I'm going to call her too.
I
Oh,
think
yeah.
we should trump them. They sent it to Council Member George. We should send the same thing to Council Member Furman.
I started to do that, and I probably will. I don't know where Cheryl and Harry Barnes live, if they are in the Ward 4 or Ward 3 section of Chevy Chase. I'm very curious about why she copied Janice. Maybe because she's my council member. I have no idea. But yeah, this project sits in Fruman's district. That's clearly where it sits. But this is not something I believe I certainly can't ignore as chair. The ANC can't ignore it, and this committee shouldn't ignore it.
But is it, our
Have,
committee needs to talk about an approach.
have any of the other ANC commissioners replied to
Oh,
either
what are they
your
gonna say?
email
No. What are they going to
or
say?
to
though?
her?
No.
They're not going to say anything?
This just
Well, we'll
happened
see,
in the
won't
last
we?
hour, Maurice, so there hasn't been enough time, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, I would say so, but you know what? We can be very quick on email when we want to. So we'll see.
I think it's good to reply swiftly.
Well, we'll see. Mary Lee, you're on mute.
This is extremely discouraging because I've been encouraged by the positive posts from that have been doing some of the work I thought for us, from Bill Hoffman and Chris Baden and Greg Schmidt and Jim Feldman and Alan Paul Brown and Karen Abrams, and today Ed Myers, from the community, not using the word racism or suggesting that, but just being positive about changing what we have in the civic center and civic core, and opening our minds to change, and following up on Ron's posts about with facts and supporting it. And I've been feeling like they're doing a lot of the work for us, but this is just outrageously discouraging. I hope that we'll hear some responses from them. If this is posted on the listserv in any way. Very discouraging.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they post it. I mean, people have a tendency to post a lot of things. Let's see if this is posted. But I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous and I mean, this is what, people in the community are dealing with. This is what we deal with. And for someone to say that in a chat,
Mm-hmm.
in a meeting is insane. And especially coming behind the words of Commissioner Gosselin. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. What are people supposed to think of it? But I mean, this is the reality. I mean, this is also why this group was formed. If you remember, one of the first things we tackled as a group was a young lady that moved out of Chevy Chase because of the racist stuff that she was experiencing. And she posted that on listserv, about what was written, I think, in chalk along the sidewalk near where she lived. I mean,
That wasn't Corinthia?
That was actually the task force, I think, before we started.
Whatever.
And it was not,
Um,
no.
The just not to dox Cheryl and Harry Barnes, but they appear to live on Aberfoyle, which I think is in Ward 4.
It's Ward 4.
And she appears to be a real estate agent.
He is a real estate agent. Yeah.
She's a neighbor of mine. Yeah.
You know her.
No, just Aberfoyle it's 3 blocks right at the bottom of my street. It's not, it backs onto the Pinehurst tributary of the park, just on the other side of Hawthorne.
Sure.
terrible.
So she's one of your constituents, Lisa.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
So I guess in summary, should we have a response directly to her from like raised about this?
You know what? I don't think we should direct anything to anyone involved in
Okay.
this is just me personally. But I think, and where I'm coming from is a statement that discusses this issue in a broader perspective. There are a lot of people that don't realize what minorities in this community go through.
Right.
Even sitting down, I've taken other minorities to eat on the avenue, and we've had experiences. It's the reality of this community. And sometimes, we have to make sure people are aware of that reality. I would hope that somebody would see an incident like this, or if they look at that meeting and saw what she put in the chat, and would be able to talk to her and say how highly offensive and inappropriate that was. And why? My goodness. And then the follow-up email? Oh my goodness. So, these are
Lisa,
things
you said you forwarded the file. Lisa, you said you forwarded it to us. I don't see it.
It came through.
You sent it to the race list.
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, to the race list.
She sent it around 7:19
After
or something like
after this
that.
Meeting started.
The chats are not available in the YouTube replays. Like the chat's only available
Chats are
to,
posted online. They're posted online on an ANC website.
oh, you can see past chats on the website?
They're
Absolutely.
posted as a separate file or separate.
Well,
It's not
the
attached
question
to
I would ask is sort of like what Libby was saying in terms of strategy. Should this be framed as part of this bigger discussion about affordable housing, or should it just be dealt with as racism like this has no place in the community? Or another way of framing it might be that that no matter how fair Lisa, the chair, has been to through this whole thing to keep everybody having a voice, this is the way people get treated if they disagree with the passionate opposition, and when it goes over the line into racism like this, that's just not acceptable. I don't know. I don't know what's the best way to frame it, because another thing is, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is that there is just a small step from what I was talking about earlier about how people not recognizing the outcomes on real people. There's a small step to treating people like this.
Yep.
And people may have been staying on one side of the line, but this shows that line is pretty fluid.
Yep.
This
And Ron,
whatever anybody posts, I will be happy to follow it up with my own post about how Lisa is being ridiculously fair and open-minded in all these committees that she's dealing with, and sometimes way too fair. It pisses me off, but she's gone out of her way to make sure that everybody is heard, and everybody, even honestly when it's not even necessary. So
I'm happy to post, but I'm not sure I would be as articulate as it should be in this case. I feel like this is challenging this is an example of a white person challenging a Black person on having a voice.
Yep. Yep. And the
And,
framing
on
of
being
the
seen and
framing
being-
of that person is so disturbing, because it would be one thing to just say, what makes Corinthia or Maria or Renee or Lisa special? What makes them special? Okay, we're all Black women, so I would maybe feel a little something about that. But the framing that she added and continued to add even worse framing in the follow-up email is despicable. It's despicable. No one else in the community, no one has framed Andrea Rosen like that. No one has framed Mary Rouse like that. I mean,
Well,
my goodness.
at least not to their face.
No, I have not seen them framed in
No,
a
no,
racist,
nobody.
classist way that
Yeah.
this member of the community was.
Maurice has his hand up.
Thank you, Corinthia. And I just felt like I've probably interrupted a couple times, so I want to apologize for people I talked over. Look, I mean, I should be surprised about what's happened to Lisa, the attack on Lisa and Corinthia. It disgusts me. And I'm sitting here thinking about, how do we break this cycle? And, this is indicative of kind of what I see as a larger issue in overall our society about just people, pulling themselves into their corners and not talking to other people that are different from them.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'm seeing both on the listserv and in this meeting, in the ANC meeting, although I know it's changed a little bit, and although I wasn't part of this survey meeting, it's that, it's all online, and it's easier to, attack somebody electronically than it is to their face. Or
Exactly.
if you understand their humanity and you see them as more than just a two-dimensional image that you've created of them, or so I just wonder how we can get out there into the community in person, have conversations, have dialogues, figure out how to agree to disagree, how to respect other people's opinions, and the fact that we may not all see things. We may see, it's okay for people to say, look, I want a civic core that, has a playground and green space and a library and a community center and all this other stuff. And that's fine that they like that, but they also have to recognize that there is also just as valid people who say, you know what, we want a thriving community where all different types of folks can live, regardless of their backgrounds and their means. And we are going to have a more rich community for that. And, this is one of the ways we can do it. We also owe it to the city. But the thing is, those are equally valid opinions, and we have to find some way to get out there and not only express them, but also acknowledge that there is a lot of emotion tied to this, and there's no one who's gonna be 100% happy with the outcome, whatever it is, and it's definitely not preordained. But we need to, so I'm just I don't know what I'm saying, other than the fact that I'm just trying to figure out how do we get things offline and in person. These
And Cal,
dialogues.
I know you got your hand up, but just to address that, the ANC is going through that now. The ANC has been verbally harassed for having meetings online. Okay, so then we go to hybrid. Then I'm sure you guys seen on the listserv the bashing from the community about the technology on the hybrid meetings. You have people that will come on hybrid and say the chair can't chair a meeting because the technology is bad. So it's been so bad that we're at the point now we're going to have a special meeting, and one of the things that we're going to talk about is the future of our meetings, whether or not we are going to do online, whether or not we're going to do in person. we're going to talk about that because of all the, uproar that we've gotten. And one of the things that I told the commissioners, I reminded them of some of the online chat, and yes, all of our chats are posted, the listserv activity, and who gets the bulk of that in this commission. And it's me. It's definitely me. I would say maybe Gosselin might be a close second at some times, but definitely for a while there, it was me to people where people would come up and say, well, Lisa, why is it always you? Why is it that you're always the being, put at the face of everything that's going wrong? Maybe it's because I'm the chair, maybe not. I don't even want to go into that. But one of the things I told the commissioners is that when we are virtual, it is way more vitriolic in the chat. Go back and look at some of those chats and what people are saying. It is extremely vitriolic. And my suggestion was, I'm not going to go to online only because that's the type of behavior that's being displayed in this community. It's way harder, like you said, Maurice, to have a face-to-face conversation with someone you disagree with, or easier to have that conversation and then come away realizing you're talking to a human being here. You're not talking, about a GS-14 government employee. You're talking about a person, and they're actually standing in front of you trying to explain their position. The more we do this online stuff, the more of that type of behavior we see. And it doesn't serve to benefit anyone. So, to answer your question, I don't know how we get around that. And we have commissioners that are not tech savvy. None of us are technical experts. I'm not a sound tech. I don't know how to wire that room so that it's efficient for both people in person and on Zoom, which are two completely different requirements. So, I don't know how we do that. To me, the easiest thing is when it's something this egregious and something this bad, just like we kind of do in our jobs, is you shine a light on it and you let the community know this occurred. It's unacceptable as a government body. We don't accept this type of behavior when it comes to members of our community. We don't want one community member bashing another community for the sake of anything. And I think we have an obligation to say that. I'm not chair. You guys are chair.
Okay,
I guess I'm next.
well, I was at the meeting, and Lisa, I think it would be good if we worked together offline to come up with a response, a post together, and I'll be happy to post. And you are going to say your part, but I would be happy. Not happy, but I feel like it's important for someone like me, and I was at the meeting. Post.
That's fine. Yep.
So I'm going to make a few comments here. One is that, Lisa, I don't think you can wire that room to be right, because it's an acoustic nightmare.
Of course.
Yeah. And compared with the one in the Presbyterian Church, which is a beautiful acoustic room. And
Completely
so it
different.
just takes one other commissioner to have their microphone on, and people online hear echo, echo, echo. So
Right.
the hybrid meetings don't work. Even the in-person meetings, I've always struggled with there. I understand that. Second point I want to make is that I have been on, facilitated, at every possible position, whether it's a participant or somebody organizing thing, many Zoom meetings in which people have had these deep human conversations that you say that you all may not think is possible. It's amazing how much you can actually do if you design it and manage it right. I'm not advocating that for ANC meetings necessarily, but I think there's some community meeting, and I'm not sure the ANC is the one to do it at this point, because I think this reliance on the ANC to do all this community engagement the way we're talking about I think that's it. I think it's probably we have to do this in the community. The
Right.
third thing is that I'm sorry, did somebody respond?
No, I was saying I agree.
The third thing is that this, I think, is important for those who weren't at the meeting, the survey meeting we were just on, to know that this came up in the context of talking about what were stakeholder groups. And so the chat started to get vitriolic and vicious when we were talking about what's a stakeholder group, and people were saying, these other groups that have influence. I've actually suggested to Lisa that we not call them stakeholder groups, because that's not saying technically not the meaning, but we were in the middle of this, and then Lisa's brought Corinthia's name up, and that's what set this woman off, and saying, why does she have any more standing than anybody else? That was the chat post that she missed. So it really wasn't until the private email that she sent to Lisa and the councilwoman and so forth that it got completely out of hand with Cheryl there. The fourth thing last thing I'll say is that, I've been writing a piece for about a week and a half about building consensus. Now I know we can't really get consensus in the neighborhood. It's not practical, but there's lessons to be learned from consensus and intentional communities that we can use to help bring the community together. And when you say, Lisa, which I'm all for, let's get people talking to each other as human beings. The most important thing to me is for people to listen to each other, to hear where the other person's actually coming from and why they feel their position is opposite or opposing of the one that the person's on the other side of. What's happening right now is very much the opposite of that, where we have these groups forming that represent a position, and we don't have this in California. I mean, you do when there's a political thing like an election campaign going, but if we're talking about what's benefits the community or the citizenry, then unless it's something that goes on the ballot, people actually get together and they have these conversations with each other, and they meet face to face with people who aren't on the same side. So
Cal, you're being totally Pollyanna. In California, they've fought over missing middle housing for like 4 years. People tore each other's eyes out and noses off in that fight.
I'm not saying we can do it like that, but there are lessons that we can learn from this. There are bits and pieces that we can do to improve the situation. Ron, I'm not suggesting we go California. It's not going to happen. The difference between Washington and California is like night and day. This is a politically based town where everything is about getting people in their corner. Anyway, I'm writing this piece. It's not about let's build consensus. It's about taking bits and pieces of the lessons and using that to help community come together, as opposed to let's go knocking on door to door, spreading misinformation to get 900 people to sign a petition. That, to me, is part of the disgusting way this is going about. This is a community of citizens. This is not, a state or a country. And so I feel like, then I wrote a couple of pieces that y'all suggested I didn't post, and rightly so back then, but bits and pieces, those about racism and so forth. I'm going to bring those back. They were in Google Docs. I've got the building consensus thing in Google Docs. I'll share that around when I get it, another couple paragraphs written. But yeah, I think somewhere somebody's got to take the lead in the community to say there's a better way than the way we go about doing it, even though this is the way we've always done in Washington.
I mean, I share a little bit of what Cal is referring to. One of the things in the beginning of the ZDD, there was some talk about having an informal get-together kind of thing, where people could just talk and maybe argue whatever and talk over each other and not try and communicate by having 2-minute testimony format. And that had a certain appeal to me, just because I think that once you get in a dialogue with people, things maybe you see opportunities for compromise or change people's minds or whatever. So, I don't know if that's ever going to be possible here or not. In a sort of almost perfect world, it would be nice if we could respond to this email and this racism, and then ended up with some sort of kumbaya where the race committee invites you to a mixer, to come have a coffee or a Coke or something in the community center from 5 to 7 on a certain day, and meet the other people. They're real people.
We've been talking about having like I think for the ZDD, I suggested something about having a race offering a wine and cheese event where we would, be open to meeting folks and actually trying to enjoy having just a social moment together. I think what we need could be an example, an activity where we aren't talking about the issues, because people don't interact enough together, period. If we were able to interact about something different, I think we would have an opportunity to listen, get to know each other better, have a different kind of bond. Ultimately, there are a lot of things we could do in the community that everybody wants, that aren't polarizing. I mean, we could host a day where we encourage everybody to meet at a certain place. We go out and we work on doing something in Rock Creek to help with the landscape. There are different gardening efforts you can do to make things better. You can have a day where everybody gets out to pick up pollution. You can have a day where I've always thought this is an appealing idea for me because I love art, but I would love to see us have a community art project, because I think people interact well around their children. And when you have children who are involved on a project, as well as adults or seniors, this could be a community-wide project that would give people an opportunity to interact. We could possibly just, sponsor it, but leave off the whole discussion of the small area plan, the civic core, affordable housing. I also was mentioned, Cal, when you were talking about different types of meetings and doing them online, some meetings that I've experienced that are pretty intimate and pretty revealing at times are when things are broken into focus groups. And I think that's a format maybe to consider, because people do, and then they report back and have formed a little subgroup in their focus group as it is. Those are just some ideas. Also, hosting an event with another organization, possibly. Maybe
HCDC.
Or maybe we reach out to Chevy Chase Citizens Association and we co-host.
Historic Chevy Chase could do a program on the history of Chevy Chase Commons versus Civic Core. And, one of the great issues of the day that has received a lot of press on the listserv, and we could let people argue about the name of the place.
Yeah, I'd love that.
I want to encourage them.
I mean, who cares?
So Libby, I love your laundry list of ideas, and the first one that you suggested, which I'm the most enthusiastic, is just know your community, get to know your neighbors and your community, the people in it. And I think we can do some of that. I also feel like we also need to sit down and drill down into the issues themselves with the community as well at some point. So I think we're going to need that as well, and not just not avoid it. But I think I like what your idea is, to establish the human connection, the feeling that we're in a community together, and so forth and so on. I think is a great way to sort of, you know, the first breaking through of the ice, I guess would be the way I would say it. So I really like that idea in particular.
Can the ANC make the meeting place available at the community center for us if we wanted to sponsor something like that? I mean, when my organization tried to do something at the community center last time, they tried to make us pay for it, and it was pretty expensive for us as an organization that runs on a shoestring.
I would think so, Carl, because you guys are, a committee of the ANC. We should be able to, reserve the space for you.
Yeah.
Okay,
wonder
so
how-
Libby,
Be something that's fun, that people feel like they can go to safely and not have to discuss the issues, quite
Sure.
frankly.
Marilyn, you
More of
must
an
have-
icebreaker type event. And so we would probably need some other backdrop of activity. Because I think people have talked about things ad nauseum and they're not listening to each other anyway.
Mhm.
might be good to not have it at the community center, maybe the library meeting room, I don't know. Upstairs. Marilee, I have this imagination that because you're with the village, you guys have all kinds of ideas and history of doing these kind of community events, the kinds of things that Libby's talking about.
Could we have something in the courtyard at the community center?
That would be a good place. We also need to look for spaces because we don't have a space right now, but yeah, you're right. We have used different spaces. Interesting to think about that.
Something that says, uses, ties into Chevy Chase Day,
Yeah.
and by saying this is like an emergency Chevy Chase Day. Let's all spend a couple hours on Saturday or Sunday afternoon in the courtyard, because we all totally agree that this space is important, and we can show it by becoming a community in this space.
Yeah. Great idea.
A bit of music, somebody could put, have a little band. I mean, something light for people to actually step out. And is it in September, Chevy Chase Day?
September 23rd, Saturday.
We need it.
That's
Yeah.
2 months from now.
Yeah.
But there could be some kind of a gardening thing or cleanup or aren't there broken playground equipment? And I don't know, it could be a work day and a music and pickleball, whatever. A lot of stuff. I like that idea.
There's something that needs to be painted. I guess we don't want to paint a building that's going to be torn down.
But the playground isn't the slide boarded up or something? I don't know. I think there's
Yes.
it could be fixed.
I don't
Nothing's going to happen to that for years anyway. So
So many years. So the first task coming out of this is that Libby and Lisa are going to do the initial response.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
and then I guess, could we just, 'cause I'm gonna have to drop off soon, could we then just kind of brainstorm via email some type of events we could probably do? I would maybe suggest doing something before September, like a little informal mixer, like we're gonna sponsor this event to get to know one another, or one of the other items that you guys suggested. I'm not really into outdoors, so I'll look at some ideas that's not like outdoors, but we could probably just exchange on email and determine what day.
Yeah. How about the
Cynthia's very
organic?
good at this stuff, you guys. It's true.
How about the organic wine store? They're
Yeah.
still, maybe we
Yeah.
could talk to them about having some sort of mixer there.
That's
Uh,
great.
And
You read my mind.
Evelyn would love that.
Yeah, so I
Elders,
think,
Evelyn.
okay, so I think, I was gonna go down there and ask, because Libby mentioned the wine and cheese, if we could bring our own cheese and buy their bread or something, and maybe just have like tasting. So maybe we can do that. Like just throw some ideas that we have, and the more ideas we have, like maybe we could do something once a month to kind of like keep it going, and then kind of wheel people in, and then later, many months, actually have one that's about talking
Yeah, 'cause
about things.
there's only about 40 people who ever actually show up at any of these things. So that's like manageable. I don't see this would get any more than that sort of core group of 40-ish people. And I bet you the wine store would be happy to let that spill out onto the sidewalk in front of the store.
Yeah.
How we need to talk about how we would do the outreach. Of course, we could do it on the listserv. What else can we do that's creative?
Well, first of all, listserv and Chevy Chase chatter. Please everybody always remember Chevy Chase chatter, because there's a community of people there who have either been kicked off Mary's listserv or refuse to go on to Mary's listserv because they find it obnoxious, and they skew a bit younger and a bit more progressive than the people on the listserv.
I'm not even familiar with Chevy Chase chatter.
Is that
It's
another
on Facebook. You're not on Facebook.
It's a Facebook group.
They're
But
great.
Facebook.
I don't do Facebook.
I don't do
I
it.
don't either.
Yeah.
That's our problem.
So,
And
so-
next door is an option too. I always
Yeah,
forget
and-
to go on next door.
We need
Chris
the Elon Musk
Vaden,
to do our.
Chris and Elizabeth Vaden have their affordable housing newsletter list that has a pretty serious mailing list. I think at this point also.
what about posting a sign on the door of the Broad Branch Market?
Sure.
Yeah, and then maybe we can leverage like Carl's listserv for his organization, and all the other.
We
I'm
can
not
put
on
it
that.
on our listserv and our weekly bulletin.
Okay.
Village.
We need some music. We're gonna need a little trio, or at least a guitar player. Somebody's gonna play some upbeat music. Anybody know any live musicians who would be up for it?
What about Crush Funk?
What's it called?
Crush Funk Band.
Fresh funk.
Crush Funk.
Is that a band?
Yeah.
I don't know them.
Oh my gosh. How do
Are
you
Sounds
not know?
awesome.
Are they from
Oh.
Chevy Chase?
They are not from Chevy Chase. They are very popular in DC. They are DC.
They're gonna cost money though, aren't they?
Yeah, they got a fee.
Yeah, but we'll see how much the fee is.
Okay.
And if the ANC will sponsor it or something. But
Oh, I forget it. Okay.
Ward 3 council members use them all the time. And as a matter of fact, Carl, Crush Funk was at the fountain rededication. That was them. So,
Right.
and everybody had a great time. They're like an icon here in DC. I can't believe y'all don't know them.
All right.
All right,
Does
I'm
anybody
good
want-
with that.
Does
Sounds
anybody,
pretty win-win, because we're supporting a business. We can draw attention to the businesses around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna be off Friday. I could walk down and to the organic wine and inquire about it if you guys okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I'll meet you down there.
Yeah, let me know if you want me to
Okay.
come.
The more the merrier. Come on.
Yeah.
their little bakery is taking off. I saw they finally put some signs outside. That's good.
It's really good. I've had their pastries and they are really, really good.
You gotta get over
All
there.
right, so the strategy here is to be seriously appalled and angry and offer pastries and go-go music to anybody who wants to join. I love that
Yeah.
strategy.
I do too.
I wish I was on the call. Technically, I'm really a GS13 now, but
Oh, she gave you a promotion. Take it.
I needed
I
that
used to
question.
be I used to be a 14, but January technically I'm a 13 now. So I went back.
Talk about.
Going the wrong
So,
way.
So Corinthia, after this gets posted, you should post something asking these people to write you a letter of recommendation for your promotion.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's good.
all right.
But,
Technically
you know,
it was, but
I
yeah.
find it interesting also the comment in light of the affordable housing discussion and the workforce housing discussion in particular. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when you really think about, you know, maybe what she was trying to portray and what she was saying, that is that, I mean, that's the target audience here for this housing. I mean, that's going to be it. The 13s, 14s, GS12s. I mean, that's around the salary range.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. That draft of that email can sort of ask, is this how you want to welcome
Right.
people in the affordable housing?
That is the audience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think too, you know, I share some stuff with friends that live throughout DC, and it's always, why is affordable housing always associated to Black people, right? So my
Exactly.
friends have worked on the Hill, who people make, well, you know, when you work on the Hill, you don't make a lot of money, and they're in affordable housing. And when you look at the majority of the people who work on the Hill, it's usually not Black people.
Right.
So, you know, they're always like pointing that out, like affordable housing doesn't equate Black all the time. Low income doesn't equate Black all the time. And I worked at HUD, and my low income housing people were in rural areas where Black people don't live, in the mountains and plains. So
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's so much that's so disturbing with what occurred. And I think, you know, maybe us trying to break that down.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Break it down.
Yes. And, you know, make sure people understand. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I think it would be educational to break it down.
And that's what
Shouldn't
I'm
have to be
thinking.
educating people.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking, Libby, is that it would be, you know, when people, you know, hopefully kind of analyze what was said and done against, you know, and like you said, Ron, the broader backdrop of affordable housing, diversity in the community. I mean, all those issues. And to have, and even like what you said, and I've said this to other people too, there's been so many attacks on proponents. People are afraid to speak out. You know, I've even seen that with Murray. I mean, who wants to speak out when you are attacked in that manner? I mean, it's awful. It's just awful on so many levels. It is just disgusting.
But you really handled it well, Lisa. I mean, I can't remember exactly what you said. You made the point, and at the same time, as always, you kept your cool and you're gracious at the end of the meeting.
Way to
Yeah.
go. Way to go, Lisa.
I tell you, I mean, I
Shouldn't
don't
have
know.
to be.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, it does after a while play on you, know, and they say racism is a public health emergency. And that's why, I mean, when you constantly have to, and you know, I'm sure my blood pressure shot up I mean, I had to call a commissioner to talk myself down. That's how agitated that chat made me. And then, to follow it up with that horrendous email. Oh my gosh. Woo. It's just, it becomes to be too much.
Hey, when you're calling Goslin to lower your blood pressure, you know your blood pressure was high.
He did a great job. He did a great job. But yeah, I mean, wow. So yeah, I think if we can write it up, educationally so that, we're saying that this is not acceptable, but in the broader perspective, here's what that behavior really means and the impact that it has. We have to do that.
So, am I on? I don't know if I'm on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just make sure. I thought that the person who posted that chat message about Corinthia was not the same as the couple that wrote to you afterwards.
That is the same.
Carrie.
One the same.
I thought there was Michelle, because Michelle was the one who had to.
She,
read
yeah,
back
yeah,
the
but
comment.
no, she had nothing to do with that.
I thought she mentioned Corinthia's
No,
name.
Michelle went after me, not Corinthia.
Okay.
It was
Right.
Harry who posted, and then the email came from his wife.
From both.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, I don't know if they use that name, interchangeably, or if it was, who was exactly on, but yeah, it's one and the same.
Okay. Just checking.
Very
There's a
unfortunate.
lot that happened right in those last few minutes. That's why.
But we've
Sure.
got a game plan, and we've got something to work with. I think that will maybe produce some slightly different results if we can pull this off. I think we've got to try something different.
Yeah.
I have a question. The response that you all are gonna put out, is that from our committee, or that's just from, I mean, who's that supposed to be coming from?
Well, it can come from the committee. It can come from me, since I was initially there. It can come from Lisa and me. It can come from the commissioners who were in the meeting.
I think the commission needs a response, to be honest with you. I think the response should be, the commission should have a response to something this egregious.
I mean, this happened in the context of not in our committee meetings or anything like that. It happened in a survey committee meeting.
Yeah.
No, but it came to our attention.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you're in your purview to respond as race committee. I mean, for sure. We've responded to other incidents in the community, so.
I just wanted to get clarity on who it's coming from, because if anything is going to be coming from us, I think we need to pass it around and have a look at it before it goes out.
I agree.
Just as a matter of content for this, my suggestion would be to say at least something about stifling an articulate voice in the community.
Yeah, amen.
I mean, what they're trying to punish is the fact that someone that is articulate is willing to speak up, and that's what they can't stand.
Right. And that
That
is so well said. And that is why I mentioned her. It had nothing to do with race. It had nothing to do with gender. That was the person that I know that has been trying to articulate their view, and has, as equally as the Andrea Rosen, as equally as the Mary Rouse. So that was my rationale for saying that. There's other people out there that I've seen recently do that, Chris, Vaden, and others. But, I know what, Corinthia has been doing and what she's been trying to articulate, and from her perspective. I mean, so why point her out in that sense? I mean, it's just, oh, so frustrating.
It's obvious. Yeah.
Well, I think they did it because you only mentioned her in that one sentence and they just jumped on it. You know, it's like the heat-seeking missile.
Mm.
Because, that comment that I made in one of our meetings that you weren't at, Lisa, and the recording went out and they didn't identify me, but I said something about the undercurrent of racism that exists in people who live in this neighborhood, potentially descended from people who were in the days when the neighborhood was formed. And, there was a blast of emails, and basically that ended up into, if we're not doing things the way that they want us to do them, then we're going to be called racist. That's how it got convoluted. And so they're looking for it. They are looking for it. Looking for these cracks to be able to wedge.
Yeah, I mean, they do this. They do this all the time. Everybody has to have an agenda, and to characterize Washington Interfaith Network as somehow having some, agenda that and undue influence is, it's just nonsense. I mean, I can accept that they always, I'm a developer, right? So, they go after me, but Washington Interfaith Network, and then they go after Corinthia.
Yeah,
because she's
You're an
a black
organization
woman.
like any other,
I mean, it's
you
just stupid. Yeah. Anyway,
For me, I just want to say this for myself, that this is a personal view. It's no reflection on anybody else here or the committee or the ANC, but these advocacy groups scare the hell out of me, all of them. And just the whole bunch of people began together with a single position and then try to get their numbers up and then, overwhelm the other side. It's a disgusting way to do things. I just have never lived in a community that was like that. And it's just amazing to me.
no.
In this day and age, that's where we are.
Does anybody want to hear an update for the entity that's behind me that you can see? The
yes, please.
I
I'm
was
sorry,
actually
the entity
present
that's behind what?
there was a consultative meeting called by the National Park Service. And those of us who were connected with the signage for that before, plus a whole raft of other people representing adjacent jurisdictions, arts councils, NGOs, you name it, about 20 to 25 people showed up for this consultation to react to the National Park Service plan to remove the tablet behind me that has the name of Newlands on it, right? And to also remove the brass plaque in front of it, which just celebrates the 100th anniversary of the fountain. So that's what the National Park Service wants to do. And they wanted to hear from people that were some way or another connected or might have an opinion on this, what they thought. And I just have two quick points to make about that. The first point is that no one seemed to object to their proposal to do this. And the second point is that this is supposed to be something that is actually done in the coming months. So the removal of that plaque might actually occur, I don't know, by the end of the summer, but that's what the National Park Service has in mind. So that's my report.
And they don't have to go back to Congress for that?
No, they could do it on their own steam.
Okay, bye Marileo, she's already gone.
Yes,
I didn't understand that. I thought that this was all had to go through Congress. Okay.
Nope. No, they had the authority to do it.
I have two suggestions. I know I came in late. My suggestions are about, trying to get the community out. I know the first one we probably couldn't afford, but I think we should have Wanda Sykes come to the community and get us all straight. I would love that.
Sorry, have who come? I didn't hear.
Wanda Sykes.
I still didn't hear what she said. Can somebody write it in the chat?
Wanda Sykes. the
Oh, Wanda
comedian.
Sykes.
I don't know if you saw her last live show, but you know, she's married to a white French woman and they adopted 2 white kids. And she said she lived through the whole pandemic in a house with white supremacy people.
Wanda Sykes, I thought Wanda Sykes was a lesbian.
She's still married.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then I think the other thing is when you guys are talking about like joining with another committee, another group, I think that would be good. And I think Libby suggested like maybe we do something every month. So maybe we can start like a little slogan saying, what if? And just put signs around all the time, like what if? So if the first month we do like towards the, what if we all just got together and, you know, said hello or was friendly to each other. And then each month it could be a different what if. What if we went out to Rock Creek Park and, you know, picked up the trash or something like that. So then people will get maybe start looking forward to, oh, so what is the what if going to be next month? And if it's something that we're doing, you know, you said like with the Chevy Chase Historical Committee or another committee, then, you know, that may be something interesting. And then we're not stuck to like one subject matter, like, okay, fine, they're having another little community wine and cheese or something. And then maybe people will start looking forward to what will the what if be next month.
Right.
And then maybe we can also consider Wilson High. I don't know if Wilson High has like a jazz band.
Oh, they do. Yeah. Yeah. Or Duke Ellington too.
Right, right. Because I think it is something about putting kids in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's sort of like just bring the temperature down.
Yeah.
And we could probably make it into like
agree.
a fundraiser for them too. I like that idea, Renee.
Mm-hmm.
That I like that too.
What did you say, Caritha?
Oh, I was saying I like that idea. Maybe try and turn it into like a fundraiser for them. Like, you know, if we were gonna pay the band, Lisa mentioned earlier, we could use like the Duke Ellington band and contribute, like pay them to help raise funds for whatever they do. I like the idea. I like the what if too. Great, very good.
I like the what
Yeah.
if because it builds a little mystery.
Right. You know, 1 month maybe it could be what if, you know, we got together and everyone, you know, fixed their bikes or we had a workshop on, you know, how to change a tire.
You mean a community that actually acts like a community?
Okay, I like that. Are we gonna adjourn? Should I stop the recording? And then I'll stop by the place on Friday and then we can start more of the conversation around it. Maybe.
Before we adjourn,
Terrific.
I want to check with Lisa. So we're not meeting next month, is that right?
Right. August, the ANC is in recess.
But we can't meet? Okay, all right.
I will not be around. If you guys want to meet, go for it.
I will be
Lisa-
mentally absent.
I'll be away in August.
Sounds like we might not have a quorum. Okay.
But we can still share ideas,
Yeah.
email about planning.
Yeah.
Who has thoughts about moving this thing forward? Or gathering? Could certainly
Yeah.
share our ideas.
Are we getting the recording?
Lisa, I'm gonna be in touch with you, tomorrow morning,
Okay,
okay?
yep.
Okay.
And
Sounds
I'm gonna be dusting off my writings and